Mows, the night slowly settles in, and everything becomes calm and quiet. It's the perfect moment to listen to a fairy tale, a story that has been softly told from one generation to the next. Tonight we will journey to a time of mills and fortunes, of clever creatures and unexpected heroes, where even the humblest beginning can lead to the grandest destiny. Imagine the gentle rustle of leaves outside your window, the soft glow of moonlight painting the world in silver, and the distant, comforting sound of night itself. Let these moments wrap around you like a warm blanket, preparing your mind for a story of wit and wonder. But before the story truly begins, you should get comfortable. Take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. So make yourself comfortable. Let the outside world fade away, and let tonight's story begin. Settle in, relax, and allow the quiet magic of the tale to carry you through the night. Once upon a time, nestled deep within a verdant valley, beside a babbling brook that powered its ancient wheel, stood a quaint little mill. For many years, this mill had belonged to an old miller, a hard-working man whose calloused hands knew the feel of every grain, and whose days were spent amidst the comforting dust of flour. He lived a simple but honest life, content with the rhythmic grind of his millstones and the sight of his 3 sons growing into strong young men. As the years passed, however, the old miller felt his own strength wane, and he knew his time was drawing short. One crisp autumn morning, with the scent of damp earth and wood smoke filling the air, he gathered his sons around his deathbed. With a weary sigh, he divided his modest inheritance amongst them. To the eldest, he bequeathed the mill itself, with its sturdy wooden frame and invaluable grinding stones. To the middle son, he left the sturdy donkey, a creature of tireless spirit, capable of carrying heavy sacks of grain to market and bringing back supplies. And to the youngest son, to him, the miller left only a cat. The 2 older brothers, upon hearing their father's will, nodded with solemn satisfaction. They understood the practical value of their inheritances and immediately began to plan their futures. The eldest imagined the continued hum of the mill, the daily routine of grinding corn and wheat. The middle son pictured himself journeying to distant towns, his faithful donkey laden with goods, making a respectable living. But the youngest son, a gentle soul named Mark, felt a heavy cloak of despair settle over him. As his brothers discussed their prospects with quiet excitement, Mark sat slumped on a worn wooden stool, holding the scruffy ginger cat in his lap. He stroked its soft fur, feeling the vibration of its gentle purr, but his heart was heavy with a profound sense of unfairness. "What am I to do?" he mumbled to himself, his voice barely a whisper, a sigh escaping his lips like a wisp of smoke into the cool morning air. "My eldest brother has the mill and can earn a living from grinding grain. My middle brother has the donkey and can transport goods and make a profit. But I," he continued, looking down at the amber eyes of the purring cat, "I have nothing but this cat. What good can a cat be to me? I shall have to eat it, or I shall surely starve and then use its skin to make a cap." The cat, who had been listening intently with an almost unnerving stillness, paused its purring. Its ears twitched, and its gaze fixed on Mark with an intelligence that seemed far too profound for a mere feline. Mark, lost in his misery, didn't immediately notice the subtle shift in the cat's demeanor. He continued to wallow in his predicament, feeling the crushing weight of his apparent misfortune. The cat, however, was no ordinary creature. Its name, though Mark did not yet know it, was simply Puss, and Puss possessed a mind sharper than any blade and a heart full of ambitious schemes. After a moment of what seemed like deep contemplation, the cat spoke, its voice a surprisingly clear, soft rumble that seemed to vibrate directly within Mark's chest, startling him so profoundly that he nearly dropped the creature. "Do not despair so readily, master," Puss purred, its voice surprisingly articulate, though still with a distinct, charming, cat-like cadence. "You fret over what seems a meager inheritance, but often the greatest fortunes spring from the most unexpected of places." Mark blinked, his eyes wide with disbelief. He rubbed his ears, convinced he must be dreaming, or perhaps that the stress of his situation was finally making him hear things. He peered closer at the cat, whose intelligent eyes met his without a hint of jest. Did you just speak?" he stammered, his voice barely audible. Puss gave a slow, deliberate nod. "Indeed, I did. And I assure you, I am quite real, and my intentions are good. Far from being your undoing, I promise you, I shall be your making. I do not require you to eat me, nor to wear my skin, master. What I require is far simpler, and it will change your fortunes beyond anything you can now imagine." Mark was utterly dumbfounded. A talking cat. A cat with a plan. His despair momentarily forgotten, replaced by a bewildering mix of shock and a flicker of hesitant hope. What do you require?" he asked, his voice still tinged with disbelief. Puss stretched languidly, extending its claws before retracting them into its velvety paws. "Only 2 things, master, and your future will be secured. Provide me with a sack, a good, sturdy sack, and a pair of boots made specifically for my size so that I might walk about more grandly and traverse the lands without fear of thorns or rough terrain. Do this for me, and you will see what wonders I can perform. You will find that you are not so poorly off as you imagine, and that a clever cat is worth more than any mill or donkey." Mark stared at the cat, a whirlwind of emotions swirling within him. It was an absurd request, yet the cat's earnestness, its intelligent gaze, and the very fact that it could speak held a strange, compelling power. The idea of buying boots for a cat seemed utterly preposterous, a folly that would only deepen his already precarious financial situation. But then again, what did he have to lose? He had nothing left but this extraordinary animal and his dwindling hope. Perhaps, just perhaps, this strange creature was his only chance. A small, desperate spark of curiosity flickered to life within him. He looked from the cat to his rough, worn hands, then back to the confident, unwavering eyes of Puss. "Boots?" he repeated slowly, a hesitant smile playing on his lips. "For a cat? Very well, Puss. I will find you a sack, and I will somehow acquire those boots. But you must prove worthy of such an investment. You must show me these wonders you speak of." And with that improbable promise, the fate of the young miller's son, and indeed the entire kingdom, began to turn on the tiny paws of a clever, ambitious cat. Mark, still bewildered, rose to his feet, a faint stirring of hope replacing the bitter taste of despair. He knew not what lay ahead, but for the first time since his father's passing, a glimmer of light pierced through the gloom, all thanks to a truly extraordinary feline. Despite his lingering bewilderment, the youngest miller's son, Mark, found himself compelled by the sheer audacity and inexplicable charisma of the talking cat. The thought of spending his last few coins on feline footwear was utterly ludicrous. Yet the unwavering confidence in Puss's amber eyes held a strange, undeniable power. So, with a deep sigh that mingled resignation with a faint stir of hope, Mark resolved to fulfill his extraordinary cat's request. He rummaged through the dusty corners of the old mill house, eventually unearthing a sturdy burlap sack, worn but still sound, its rough texture smelling faintly of forgotten grain. For the boots, a more significant challenge presented itself. Mark had to barter a few meager possessions: a sturdy wooden carving his father had made, a small polished stone he'd kept since childhood, at the nearest village market. He patiently explained his peculiar need to a bewildered cobbler who, after much head-scratching and measuring of Puss's paws, with a length of twine, reluctantly set to work. The boots, when finally crafted, were surprisingly elegant, soft, supple leather, snug around Puss's ankles and gleaming with a fresh polish, complete with tiny buckles that clicked faintly when the cat took a step. When Puss first slipped his paws into the custom-made boots, a transformation seemed to occur. He stood taller, his posture more erect, and a palpable air of sophisticated mischief settled upon him. He took a few experimental, almost theatrical steps, the soft leather creaking gently, and then looked up at Mark with a gaze of profound satisfaction. "Excellent, master. Simply excellent," he purred, a new resonance in his voice, now slightly muffled by the boots, lending it an even grander quality. "Now, the real work begins. Your fortune, I assure you, is merely a matter of time and a little ingenuity." Puss then instructed Mark to fill the sack with a mix of bran and corn, ensuring it was tied with a string that could be easily loosened. With his new boots firmly on his paws, the sack slung over his shoulder, Puss bid Mark a brisk farewell and strode out of the mill house, a figure of undeniable purpose, leaving Mark behind. Still reeling from the surreal turn his life had taken, he simply shook his head, a faint, disbelieving smile playing on his lips, and wondered if he had truly done the right thing. Puss in Boots, as he was now proudly known, did not waste a moment. He headed straight for a particular rabbit warren, a spot known to be teeming with plump, unsuspecting rabbits. Perfect for his grand plan. He carefully laid the sack flat on the ground, spreading the enticing bran and corn just inside its mouth, and then concealed himself amongst the overgrown bushes nearby, holding the end of the string with one dexterous paw. His patience was legendary, a feline virtue he now put to the test. He waited, motionless, for what felt like an eternity, but was in fact only a short while. Soon, the irresistible scent of the grain lured a plump, curious young rabbit to the sack. The rabbit hopped in, its nose twitching, eagerly nibbling at the bait. In a flash, Puss yanked the string. The sack snapped shut, and the rabbit was his. With a triumphant twitch of his whiskers, Puss adjusted the now struggling sack over his shoulder. This was merely the beginning. Without delay, Puss set off directly for the royal palace, a magnificent edifice of gleaming stone and soaring towers that dominated the landscape. The journey was long, and his tiny boots clicked purposefully on the cobblestone paths. When he arrived at the imposing gates, the guards, initially amused by the sight of a cat in boots, quickly grew respectful as Puss, with an air of immense importance, demanded an audience with the king. His voice, clear and confident, carried an unmistakable tone of authority that belied his small stature. "I have a gift," he announced to the astonished sentries, "for His Majesty, from my master, the Marquis of Carriage." The guards, accustomed to the peculiarities of court life and sensing an unusual but potentially significant event, led Puss through vast courtyards and echoing halls until they reached the king's audience chamber. There, seated on a magnificent throne, sparkling with jewels and gold, was the king himself, a portly man with a kindly face, currently engaged in a rather tedious discussion with his ministers. He looked up, his brow furrowed in mild annoyance, as a small booted cat was ushered into his presence. Puss, however, was undaunted. With a graceful bow, almost a flourish, he presented the sack, from which he carefully extracted the still twitching rabbit. "Your Majesty," Puss began, his voice resonating with respectful sincerity, "my master, the Marquis of Carriage, bids me present this humble offering. A wild rabbit, freshly caught from his own extensive hunting grounds. He hopes it pleases. Your Majesty." The king's eyes widened slightly. He loved fresh game, and the rabbit was indeed a fine specimen. But more intriguing was the mention of the Marquis of Carriage. He had never heard of such a noble, and yet Puss spoke with such conviction, implying vast lands and a generous spirit. "A Marquis of Carriage, you say?" the king mused aloud, his voice thoughtful. "I confess I am not familiar with this noble. But this is a most excellent rabbit. Pray tell your master that I am greatly pleased. And tell me, good cat, what is your master like?" Puss, seeing the hook taken, spun a delightful web of half-truths and grand descriptions. He spoke of the Marquis's immense wealth, his vast estates stretching as far as the eye could see, his exquisite taste, and his profound loyalty to the crown. All of this, of course, was pure fabrication, but delivered with such an air of genuine pride and detailed embellishment that the king, who enjoyed tales of noble subjects, found himself thoroughly charmed. "A remarkable cat indeed," the king chuckled, stroking his beard. "And a most thoughtful master. See that this cat is given a good meal, and send him back with my warmest regards to his Marquis." Puss, having secured his first victory, bowed once more, accepted a generous portion of royal fish, and returned to the mill, his clever mind already planning the next stage of his audacious scheme. Over the next few weeks and months, Puss in Boots became a familiar, if still highly unusual sight, at the royal palace. Almost every other day he would arrive, sometimes with a brace of fat partridges caught by similar cunning, sometimes with a string of succulent quails, or even a large glistening trout pulled from a nearby stream. Each gift was presented with the same impeccable courtesy and unwavering declaration, "From my master, the Marquis of Carriage, your Majesty, from his land's waters." The king grew increasingly impressed by the sheer generosity and the apparent boundless hunting grounds of this mysterious Marquis. He began to speak of the Marquis of Carriage with his courtiers, speculating on his identity, his vast wealth, and his evident good taste. The royal cooks eagerly anticipated Puss's arrivals, for the game he brought was always of the finest quality. Mark, back at the mill, watched in stunned silence as Puss returned each time, sometimes with coins given by the grateful king, always with a tale of his latest triumph. The young miller's son was no longer despairing. Instead, he was in a constant state of mild disbelief and growing wonder. He still lived a simple life, but the fear of starvation had vanished. Puss's daily efforts, while not directly enriching Mark's personal coffers in a grand way yet, were slowly but surely building an invisible edifice of reputation and expectation around the non-existent Marquis of Carriage. The king, through Puss's cunning, was being primed. A seed of curiosity, admiration, and a touch of royal favor had been planted, carefully watered by each successive gift. Puss knew that perception was reality, especially in the eyes of royalty, and he was masterfully crafting the perception of a powerful, wealthy, and benevolent nobleman. He was not just bringing game, he was weaving a narrative, brick by invisible brick, that would soon be ready for its grand unveiling. Mark, watching his cat polish his tiny boots each evening, began to truly believe that this extraordinary feline was indeed his fortune. The weeks that followed Puss's initial successes at the palace saw him become a truly legendary figure, not just among the palace staff, but even within the royal court itself. His regular visits, each bearing exquisite game, continued to solidify the king's perception of the generous, albeit elusive, Marquis of Carabas. The royal kitchens hummed with appreciation for the plump partridges and succulent pheasants Puss brought, and the king often mentioned the Marquis's thoughtfulness during his evening meals. Mark, back at the mill, had grown accustomed to the sight of Puss returning, sometimes with a small pouch of gold coins, sometimes with a proud flick of his tail indicating a particularly successful delivery. The young miller's son was no longer just confused. He was filled with a mixture of awe and growing excitement. He had begun to trust Puss implicitly, though he still couldn't quite fathom the depths of the cat's grand design. One bright morning, with the sun casting long shadows across the valley and the river glinting like a ribbon of silver, Puss returned to the mill with an air of unusual urgency. His boots clicked a rapid rhythm on the worn floorboards, and his whiskers twitched with barely contained excitement. "Master," he exclaimed, his voice a low, urgent purr. "The time is ripe. Today is the day our grand scheme truly blossoms." Mark looked up from mending a fishing net, his brow furrowed with curiosity. "What scheme, Puss? What must I do?" he asked, accustomed now to the cat's theatrical pronouncements. Puss rubbed against Mark's leg once, a gesture of affection and reassurance. "Listen closely, master, for this requires your immediate and unquestioning cooperation. I have learned from my visits to the palace, from the scullery maids and the stable boys, that the king himself, accompanied by his beautiful daughter, the princess, will be taking a carriage ride along the riverbank this very afternoon. It is their custom, a pleasant diversion they enjoy on such fine days." Mark listened intently, sensing the weight of the cat's words. "And what does that mean for us, Puss?" he prompted, his heart beginning to beat a little faster. "It means," Puss declared, puffing out his chest, "that you, master, must proceed to the river, to the very spot where the king's carriage is expected to pass. There, you will strip off your humble clothes, all of them, mind you, and enter the water for a refreshing bath. Do not hesitate, and do not question. Just immerse yourself in the flowing water, as if enjoying a leisurely swim." Mark's eyes widened. Bathe in the river? Completely naked, in full view of the king and princess? The idea was utterly mortifying, yet Puss's fierce gaze left no room for argument. The young man, who had always been rather shy and reserved, felt a wave of trepidation wash over him. "But, Puss, surely I cannot—" he began, but the cat cut him off with a sharp flick of his tail. "No buts. Master, this is crucial. Trust me. Your fortune, your future, your very standing in this kingdom hinges on this moment. Be brave, be bold, and do exactly as I say." Seeing the resolute determination in Puss's eyes, Mark, despite his considerable embarrassment, knew he had no choice. He had placed his trust in this extraordinary cat, and now was the time to see that trust through. With a nervous gulp, he nodded. "Very well, Puss. I will do it." Puss gave a satisfied nod. "Excellent. Now, make haste. I shall go on ahead and prepare the scene." And with that, Puss in Boots darted out of the mill, leaving Mark to ponder the absurdity and the momentousness of his impending riverside performance. Mark, feeling strangely exposed even before he had reached the river, made his way to the designated spot. The air was cool and crisp, and the river flowed gently, its surface sparkling under the midday sun. Taking a deep breath, he quickly stripped off his worn miller's clothes, folding them neatly on the bank, a small gesture of dignity in a situation that felt anything but dignified. Then, with a shiver, he waded into the refreshing, cool water, letting its current swirl around him. He ducked his head under, emerging with water streaming from his hair, trying his best to look natural and relaxed, despite his pounding heart and the acute awareness that at any moment the royal carriage might appear. Meanwhile, Puss in Boots, having raced ahead, hid himself strategically among the reeds along the riverbank, his tiny boots sinking slightly into the soft earth. He waited, his ears swiveling, until he heard the distinct sound of carriage wheels approaching, the rhythmic clip-clop of horses' hooves, and the distant murmur of voices. This was his cue. As the magnificent royal carriage, emblazoned with the king's crest, drew near, carrying the amiable king and his radiantly beautiful daughter, the princess, Puss sprang from his hiding place. He began to cry out at the top of his lungs, his voice shrill and desperate, echoing across the water. "Help! Help! My master, the Marquis of Carriage, is drowning. Oh, woe is me! Thieves have stolen his clothes from the riverbank. He is being robbed. Help, your majesty, help." Puss's cries were so convincing, so filled with urgency and genuine distress, that they instantly caught the attention of the king. The royal carriage, moving at a stately pace, immediately halted. The king, peering out of the window with concern, saw a small booted cat frantically gesticulating towards a young man struggling, or at least appearing to struggle, in the water. He recognized the clever cat who brought him such fine game. "Good heavens!" exclaimed the king, his kindly face etched with alarm. "Is that the cat of the Marquis of Carriage? What has happened?" He quickly ordered his coachman to stop and his guards to investigate. "My good cat," the king called out, "what is this terrible news you bring?" Puss, with a masterful display of theatrical despair, rushed towards the carriage. "Oh, your majesty!" he cried, his voice laced with sorrow. "My poor master, the Marquis of Carriage, was enjoying a refreshing swim, as he often does in his vast domain, when brigands, wicked villains, set upon him. They stole his magnificent garments, his jewel-encrusted sword, his silken cloak, everything. And now he risks drowning from the cold and shame." The king, a benevolent and trusting ruler, was utterly convinced. The very idea that such a tragedy could befall the generous Marquis of Carriage, a nobleman he had come to respect, albeit sight unseen, filled him with indignation. He immediately ordered his personal guards to search the riverbanks for the supposed thieves, though of course they found nothing. More importantly, he commanded his attendants to retrieve a spare suit of royal clothing from his own travel wardrobe. "We cannot have the Marquis of Carriage suffer such an indignity," the king declared, his voice booming with authority. "Bring him fresh attire at once, the finest we have, and a horse for him, too." Mark, still shivering in the river, watched in stunned disbelief as royal guards rushed to his aid, and then as attendants, under the king's direct order, held out a magnificent suit of clothes. It was made of the finest velvet, richly embroidered with gold thread, complete with silken stockings, buckled shoes, and a feathered hat. Never in his wildest dreams had Mark imagined wearing such finery. He emerged from the water, his humble self, feeling utterly overwhelmed, and allowed the attendants to help him dress. The clothes, though designed for a slightly larger man, fit him surprisingly well, their luxurious fabric and elegant cut instantly transforming his appearance. When Mark, now resplendent in his borrowed royal finery, stood before the king, a profound change had indeed occurred. The rough miller's son was gone, replaced by a figure of unexpected elegance and grace. The king, seeing Mark for the first time, was truly impressed. The young man's natural good looks, combined with the exquisite attire and a certain noble bearing that Puss had shrewdly observed in his master, created an image perfectly fitting for a marquis. The princess, seated beside her father, also gazed at Mark with keen interest, her eyes sparkling with curiosity and admiration. She had often heard her father speak of the generous Marquis, and now, seeing him emerge from such a dramatic incident, looking so handsome and distinguished, she felt a flutter of excitement. "My dear Marquis of Carriage," the king boomed, extending a hand to Mark, a gesture of both welcome and commiseration. I am truly sorry for this unfortunate incident. Those scoundrels will be brought to justice, I assure you. But it gladdens my heart to finally meet you. I have heard so much about your generosity from your most excellent cat, and now I see that he has indeed spoken truly of your noble bearing. Mark, still speechless from the speed and success of Puss's elaborate ruse, could only bow deeply, offering a stammered, "Your Majesty, your kindness is boundless." He felt a thrill of exhilaration mingled with sheer disbelief. He was no longer just Mark, the miller's son. Thanks to his extraordinary cat, he was now, to the king and princess, the Marquis of Carriage. His destiny had been irrevocably altered by a clever feline and a pair of boots. The transformation was astonishing, even to Mark himself. Clad in the sumptuous royal attire, the miller's son, who had always worn coarse fabrics and known the dust of flour more intimately than the scent of fine perfume, now stood as a figure of unexpected elegance. The rich velvet of the coat settled around his shoulders with an unfamiliar weight, and the silken stockings felt impossibly smooth against his skin. His hands, though still bearing the faint marks of labor, now seemed more refined as they rested upon the embroidered lapels. Puss, observing from a discreet distance, a glint of triumphant satisfaction in his clever eyes, gave an almost imperceptible nod. The plan was working, perhaps even better than he had dared to hope. The king, beaming with fatherly pride and the satisfaction of having aided a noble subject, extended his hand towards Mark, inviting him into the magnificent carriage. "Come, my dear Marquis," he boomed, his voice warm and inviting. "Do not stand there shivering from your ordeal. Join us. The princess and I would be delighted by your company. We were simply enjoying the fine weather and the beauty of these very riverbanks." Mark, his heart still thrumming with a dizzying mix of fear and exhilaration, managed a polite bow and climbed into the plush interior of the carriage. The velvet seats, the intricate carvings, the soft swaying motion. It was a world utterly alien to him, a world he was now impossibly a part of. Seated opposite him, bathed in the soft light filtering through the carriage windows, was the princess. Her beauty was truly breathtaking, beyond anything Mark had ever imagined. Her gown, a shimmer of silken blue, seemed to capture the very essence of the sky. Her eyes, the color of deep sapphires, met his with a gaze that was both curious and gentle, framed by long, dark lashes. A delicate smile touched her lips, and Mark felt a warmth spread through him that had nothing to do with the unexpected luxury of his new clothes. He found himself momentarily lost for words, his carefully constructed persona of the Marquis threatening to crumble under the weight of her loveliness. The king, sensing a momentary awkwardness, jovially broke the silence. "My dear daughter," he announced, "this is the brave Marquis of Carriage, whose clever cat has brought us such delightful game for many months. And now, alas, he has suffered a most unfortunate encounter with villains. A terrible thing indeed." The princess nodded, her gaze still fixed on Mark. "Indeed, father, I am so sorry for your misfortune, Marquis. It must have been a terrifying experience." Her voice was soft, melodic, like the chime of distant bells. Mark, recovering his composure and recalling Puss's earlier subtle coaching on how a nobleman should carry himself, with quiet confidence and a touch of refined humility, cleared his throat. "Your Royal Highness is too kind," he replied, striving for a voice that was calm and assured, rather than the stammering one that threatened to escape. It was indeed a moment of peril, but thanks to the swift intervention of His Majesty's guards and the loyalty of my faithful Puss, I am quite unharmed, merely a chill, perhaps. he managed a small, reassuring smile, a smile that conveyed a quiet strength despite his recent ordeal. As the carriage continued its gentle journey along the scenic riverside, Puss, having satisfied himself with Mark's entry into royal society, had cleverly slipped away. He was now running ahead, his booted paws pounding the earth with renewed purpose, already planning the next, even grander stage of his magnificent deception. But for Mark, enclosed within the intimate world of the royal carriage, Puss's presence was no longer immediately necessary. He had to rely on his own wits and the remarkable transformation that the royal clothes and the cat's cunning had bestowed upon him. The conversation flowed surprisingly easily. The king, delighted to have a new noble to converse with, asked Mark about his supposed estates, his hunting grounds, and his general thoughts on the kingdom. Mark, drawing upon his years of observing the natural world, and with a surprisingly imaginative flair he never knew he possessed, spoke of rolling hills, ancient forests teeming with game, and fertile fields. He embellished details, creating vivid mental images of vast, prosperous lands. He spoke with a quiet passion, his words infused with a genuine love for the land, even if it was a land he had only just invented. The king listened with rapt attention, nodding approvingly at Mark's eloquent descriptions. But it was with the princess that Mark truly found his stride. Her questions were more personal, more nuanced. She asked about his interests, his favorite books, the beauty of the dawn over his lands, and the quiet moments he savored. Mark, remembering Puss's admonition to appear cultivated and refined, spoke of poetry he had never read, of philosophical texts he had barely heard of, weaving them into his responses with a surprising grace. He spoke of the simple pleasures of life, the beauty of a sunset, the melody of birdsong, things he truly appreciated from his miller's humble existence, but now framed them in the language of a nobleman. His responses were thoughtful, earnest, and completely captivating. The princess, accustomed to the often stilted conversations of court, found Mark utterly charming. He was handsome, certainly, with kind eyes and a warm smile that reached them. But it was his apparent humility, his quiet strength, and the depth of his fabricated experiences that truly drew her in. She found herself enchanted by his seemingly genuine warmth and the way he spoke with such soft sincerity. There was an earnestness about him that she found deeply appealing, a refreshing contrast to the often superficial flattery of the other courtiers. She watched his expressions as he spoke, noting the flicker of intelligence in his eyes, the gentle curve of his lips when he smiled. He possessed a certain quiet magnetism that was irresistible. As the carriage continued its journey, time seemed to melt away. Mark found himself completely absorbed in the conversation, forgetting his fear, forgetting the deception, simply enjoying the princess's company. He made her laugh with a self-deprecating remark about his unfortunate dip, and listened intently as she spoke of her own interests in painting and gardening, offering thoughtful comments that showed he truly heard her. A comfortable rapport developed between them, a delightful dance of words and smiles that blossomed in the royal carriage. The king, observing the easy camaraderie between his daughter and the young Marquis, felt a swell of satisfaction. This mysterious nobleman, whose cat brought him such fine gifts, and who now possessed such a pleasant and cultured demeanor, seemed a most suitable match for his beloved princess. He had always wished for his daughter to marry for love, or at least for genuine affection, and the way she was gazing at the Marquis, her cheeks flushed with a delicate blush, suggested that something truly special was indeed unfolding before his very eyes. The king smiled, a silent nod of approval. By the time the royal carriage eventually turned back towards the palace, the sun beginning its slow descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, a profound connection had been forged. Mark, the miller's son, had not merely played the part of the Marquis of Carriage. He had embodied it, his natural good nature shining through the borrowed finery. The princess, captivated by his charm, his looks, and his apparent nobility, found herself increasingly drawn to this enigmatic stranger. And Mark, for his part, was utterly smitten. His future, which had been so uncertain just hours ago, now seemed to stretch before him, glimmering with unimaginable possibilities, all thanks to the incredible machinations of his cunning, boot-wearing cat. The initial step of deception had been executed perfectly. Now, the foundation of a royal romance had been laid. While Mark, now transformed into the elegant Marquis of Carriage, was charming the king and captivating the princess within the opulent confines of the royal carriage. Puss in Boots was not idle. Having orchestrated the dramatic rescue and the successful introduction of his master, the clever cat had slipped away, disappearing into the dense foliage along the riverbank with the stealth of a shadow. His mission was far from over. Indeed, the most ambitious and daring part of his plan was just beginning. With his custom-made boots clicking a relentless rhythm on the dusty roads, Puss raced ahead of the slow-moving royal procession, his eyes fixed on the horizon, where vast fields of golden wheat and lush green pastures stretched out, seemingly without end. These expansive lands belonged to a formidable and feared ogre, a powerful and rather unpleasant creature, renowned throughout the region for his immense wealth, his magical abilities, and his decidedly bad temper. The ogre owned all the castles, the farms, and the forests for miles around, exploiting the local peasants who tilled his fields and tended his flocks. These poor souls lived in constant fear of their tyrannical landlord, their lives a ceaseless cycle of hard labor and meager rewards. Puss knew this, and it was precisely this knowledge that formed the cornerstone of his next elaborate deception. As the royal carriage, with its comfortable pace, slowly made its way along the main road that wound through these magnificent domains, Puss would dash ahead, covering ground with astonishing speed. His lithe body weaved through thickets and leaped over fences, his boots a blur of motion. Each time he spotted a group of peasants toiling in the fields, perhaps reaping a harvest of barley or tending to a herd of fat, contented sheep, he would stop, take a moment to compose himself, and then approach them with an air of profound authority. His arrival always caused a stir. A cat in boots, walking and talking like a gentleman, was, after all, an extraordinary sight. The peasants, initially wide-eyed with disbelief, would cautiously lower their tools, their faces etched with a mixture of fear and wonder. Puss, seeing their apprehension, would fix them with a stern, unwavering gaze, his whiskers twitching slightly, not from nervousness, but from the sheer audacity of his scheme. "Listen to me, good people," Puss would declare, his voice ringing out with an unmistakable tone of command, amplified by the confidence he now exuded. "The king himself is approaching. He will be passing through these very fields, admiring the richness of the land, when he asks you whose fields these are, whose grain fills these barns, whose cattle graze on these pastures. You must tell him clearly and without hesitation that they belong to the Marquis of Carriage. Do you understand?" The peasants, bewildered and a little terrified, would often exchange uneasy glances. But these lands belonged to the ogre. One brave, trembling farmer might venture, his voice barely a whisper, his gaze darting fearfully towards the distant, imposing silhouette of the ogre's castle. Puss's eyes would narrow. "The ogre?" he would scoff, his tone dripping with disdain. "Forget the ogre. From this day forward, these lands belong to the Marquis of Carriage. And I warn you," he would continue, lowering his voice to a menacing purr, "if you dare to speak another name, If you fail to attribute these magnificent holdings to my master, the Marquis, you will be most severely punished. The king will be displeased, and the Marquis of Carriage will see to it that you suffer the gravest consequences. But if you obey, if you speak the truth, then you shall be rewarded beyond your wildest dreams." The threat, combined with the sheer strangeness of the situation and the implicit authority of a cat who spoke of kings and marquises, was enough to cow the already downtrodden peasants. They lived in a world where power was arbitrary and often cruel. Defying a talking cat who spoke of royal displeasure seemed like a very bad idea. The memory of the ogre's wrath was fresh in their minds, but the new, immediate threat from this tiny, powerful feline held a different kind of terror. So, with solemn nods and hushed whispers of agreement, they promised to obey. Puss would then dash off, racing further down the road, repeating his dramatic warning to every group of laborers he encountered. From the vineyards heavy with ripening grapes to the orchards laden with apples, from the bustling shepherd camps to the small villages clustered around ancient wells. Puss spread his deceptive decree. The word quickly spread amongst the peasant communities. When the king asks, it is the Marquis of Carriage. Fear, combined with a flicker of hope for the promised, if vague, rewards, ensured their compliance. Soon enough, the royal carriage, with Mark still charming the princess, rolled into sight of these very fields. The king, peering out of the window with the princess by his side, could not help but marvel at the immense prosperity that lay before them. "What splendid fields!" he exclaimed, gesturing with a satisfied sweep of his hand. "Such rich harvests! Whose lands are these, good people?" he called out to a group of reapers, their scythes glinting in the afternoon sun. The reapers, remembering Puss's dire warning, immediately straightened up. With a unison that suggested either careful instruction or profound terror, they bowed low and responded loudly, their voices carrying clearly across the fields. "These, your majesty, are the lands of the Marquis of Carriage." The king's eyes widened with pleased surprise. He turned to Mark, a benevolent smile on his face. "My dear Marquis," he chuckled, "your modesty prevents you from speaking of the true extent of your wealth. These are truly magnificent holdings. I am deeply impressed." Mark, still reeling from the whirlwind of events, could only offer a polite, slightly flustered smile and a humble nod. He felt a thrill of disbelief and an unsettling flicker of guilt, but the princess's admiring gaze quickly pushed those feelings aside. As the carriage continued, they passed other groups of peasants. "Whose cattle are these?" the king would ask a group of herdsmen. "The Marquis of Carriage's, your majesty," they would dutifully reply, pointing to vast herds of plump, healthy cows. "And these fine barns bursting with grain?" he would inquire of a cluster of villagers. "They belong to the Marquis of Carriage, your majesty," came the chorus of voices. With each confirmation, the king's admiration for the Marquis of Carriage grew. He truly believed that this young man, seated beside him, was a noble of immense wealth and influence, a master of vast, prosperous domains. The sheer scale of the claimed lands, the evident prosperity of the peasantry, who, despite their fear, worked diligently, and the repeated, consistent answers from everyone they encountered, painted an irresistible picture of a powerful and benevolent lord. The princess, too, was increasingly impressed. To marry a man of such vast holdings, a man who possessed such charm and apparent humility, was truly a dream come true. The journey continued like this for many miles, each turn in the road revealing another expanse of land, another group of people, all of whom, thanks to Puss's ingenious threats, confirmed the fictitious ownership. Puss, meanwhile, remained unseen, a silent, swift whirlwind of calculated deceit, always just ahead of the royal procession, ensuring every witness was properly coached. He was a master puppeteer, pulling the strings of an entire landscape, carefully constructing a reality for the king that was utterly false, yet undeniably compelling. The king, utterly delighted by what he perceived as the boundless prosperity of his future son-in-law, grew more and more convinced that the Marquis of Carriage was the most eligible bachelor in the entire kingdom. He often turned to Mark, his eyes sparkling with delight, and praised him for his excellent management and his apparent generosity. Mark, by now, had found a way to respond with a subtle blend of aristocratic modesty and genuine appreciation for the king's compliments, further solidifying the deception. He felt like an actor in the most elaborate play imaginable, with Puss as the hidden director. The sheer audacity of it all was exhilarating, and the admiring glances from the princess fueled his growing confidence. The stage was set, the reputation cemented. All that remained was the grand finale, the final crucial step that would solidify his master's new identity forever. Puss knew exactly where they were headed and who they would encounter next. As the king's carriage trundled onward, laden with the admiring glances of the princess and the delighted exclamations of the king, Puss in Boots continued his tireless work. A whirlwind of calculated energy. He had successfully cemented the notion of the Marquis of Carriage's immense wealth and vast properties in the king's mind, creating an illusion so convincing it almost defied belief. But the true jewel in the crown of his master's fabricated fortune, the most magnificent and strategically vital asset, remained ahead: the formidable castle of the Ogre. Puss knew this was the ultimate prize, the final piece in his grand tapestry of deception, and the most dangerous. With his tiny boots kicking up dust, Puss left the last group of dutifully coached peasants behind. His pace quickened, his agile body a blur of ginger fur and gleaming leather. He was driven by a mixture of ambition, loyalty, and a palpable sense of the climax approaching. The air seemed to grow heavier as he drew closer to the ogre's domain. A subtle shift in the atmosphere, as if the very land held its breath in the presence of such a powerful, if malevolent, being. Soon, towering above the surrounding landscape, the ogre's castle came into view. It was not a grim, foreboding fortress, but rather a sprawling, magnificent edifice, its stone walls meticulously crafted, its turrets piercing the sky with an almost arrogant splendor. Lavish gardens meticulously manicured stretched out around it, replete with exotic flora and sparkling fountains. This was a place of immense wealth, accumulated through centuries of the ogre's dominance and the tireless labor of the local populace who toiled under his shadow. Puss slowed his approach, his sharp senses taking in every detail. He understood that this was no ordinary opponent. The ogre was renowned not only for his vast riches and tyrannical rule, but also for his potent magical abilities, particularly his mastery of shape-shifting. Legends whispered of the ogre's capacity to transform into any creature, however great or small, a power that made him virtually untouchable and instilled a profound terror in the hearts of all who lived nearby. But Puss, for all his awareness of the danger, felt no fear, only a thrilling surge of strategic anticipation. He knew that the ogre's greatest strength, his magical prowess, would ultimately be his undoing, if played upon correctly. With a composed and confident stride, Puss approached the massive, intricately carved oak doors of the castle. He did not sneak or hide. Instead, he rapped firmly with one of his booted paws, a surprisingly resonant sound that echoed through the quiet courtyard. A moment later, a small, wary-looking goblin peered through a tiny grate. "What do you want, little cat?" the goblin sneered, its voice raspy, clearly surprised by such an unusual visitor. Puss puffed out his chest, his voice taking on an air of utmost importance and politeness. "Pray tell your master, the magnificent ogre, that Puss in Boots, humble servant to the illustrious Marquis of Carriage, has come to pay his respects and request a moment of his esteemed time. My master, the Marquis, is accompanying the king himself on a journey through these lands, and I merely wish to inform the ogre of their approach and convey my master's compliments on his truly magnificent estate." The goblin, taken aback by Puss's articulate speech and sophisticated manner, scurried off, returning a moment later to grudgingly open the heavy doors just enough for Puss to slip through. The interior of the castle was even more opulent than its exterior suggested. Vast halls adorned with tapestries depicting ancient battles and mythical beasts, gleaming suits of armor, and tables laden with the remnants of a lavish feast, roasted meats, overflowing goblets, and piles of exotic fruits. All spoke of unchecked indulgence and power. The air was thick with the scent of roasted game, rich wines, and something vaguely metallic, perhaps from the ogre's strange alchemy. In the center of the grand dining hall, slumped on an enormous, carved chair that resembled a throne, sat the ogre. He was a truly colossal figure, larger than any man, with a crude, jovial yet menacing face, small, glinting eyes, and a vast, booming laugh that seemed to shake the very foundations of the castle. He wore a crown of crude gold and jewels, and his fingers, thick as sausages, were adorned with rings of immense size. He watched Puss approach, a curious smirk playing on his lips. "Well, well, well," the ogre rumbled, his voice like rocks tumbling down a mountain. "A talking cat, in boots no less. What brings such a curious creature to my humble abode? And who is this Marquis of Carriage you speak of, whose servant you claim to be?" Puss bowed deeply, performing a perfect deferential flourish. "Oh, most powerful ogre," he began, his voice dripping with honeyed flattery. "Your fame precedes you. Even in the farthest corners of the kingdom, tales are told of your unparalleled might and your extraordinary magical abilities. My master, the Marquis of Carriage, who along with the king will soon be passing by your magnificent castle, specifically instructed me to pay my respects to so renowned a lord. He marvels at your power, as does the entire court." The ogre, for all his strength and fearsome reputation, was incredibly vain. His small eyes glittered with pleasure at the lavish praise. He puffed out his chest even further, a guttural sound of satisfaction rumbling in his throat. "Indeed, little cat," he boomed, "my power is unmatched. No creature, great or small, can stand against me. And as for magic, well, there is no wizard, no sorcerer, no enchantress in all the land who possesses my unique gifts." He paused, savoring the moment, then took a long swig from a jeweled goblet. Puss, seeing that the ogre was completely captivated by his own ego, moved to the next phase of his plan. "Ah, yes, your magnificence," Puss purred, his voice filled with feigned awe. "I have indeed heard whispers of your most incredible talent, the ability to transform yourself into any creature you desire. It is said that you can take the form of a ferocious lion, or a mighty elephant, or even a terrifying dragon. Such power is truly beyond comprehension." Puss knew precisely how to stroke the ogre's massive ego, building him up for the inevitable fall. The ogre laughed, a booming, self-satisfied sound that reverberated through the hall. "Whispers? Ha! It is more than mere whispers, little cat. It is the truth. I can indeed transform into any beast, great or small. Witness!" And with a flash of light and a roar that shook the very rafters, the ogre transformed before Puss's astonished eyes. In the blink of an eye, the massive, crude ogre was gone, replaced by an enormous, majestic lion, its golden mane bristling, its sharp claws extended, and its terrifying roar filling the hall, a sound that would send lesser creatures fleeing in terror. Puss, however, did not flinch. He merely widened his eyes in a display of exaggerated amazement, So astounding! Unbelievable! He exclaimed, pressing a paw to his chest in theatrical awe. Truly, your magnificence, that is a feat of magic unlike any I have ever witnessed. The sheer power, the speed of the transformation. It is truly beyond mortal understanding. He continued to shower the lion with praise, his words like silken chains, binding the ogre ever more tightly to his vanity. The ogre, still in his lion form, preened, enjoying Puss's genuine-looking admiration. After a moment, with another flash, he reverted to his original, monstrous form, beaming proudly. There, little cat. Do you believe me now? Do you see the extent of my power? Indeed, your magnificence, I do, Puss replied, his voice still brimming with apparent wonder. No one could doubt it after witnessing such a display. To transform into such a magnificent, fearsome beast is truly remarkable. However, Puss continued, a subtle, almost imperceptible shift in his tone, a hint of playful challenge entering his voice. It is one thing to transform into a large creature, one that already possesses great power. But it is whispered, though I find it difficult to believe, that you can also transform into the tiniest of creatures, a mouse, perhaps, or a small bird. That, your magnificence, would truly be a test of your supreme magical command. For to shrink oneself, to become so utterly insignificant, that would surely require a power even greater than becoming a lion. The ogre's eyes narrowed slightly. He puffed out his chest. A flicker of annoyance mingled with an even stronger surge of vanity. To transform into a large creature was impressive, but transforming into something small, a mere mouse, was indeed considered a more subtle and arguably more difficult feat of magic, requiring precise control. He saw Puss's implied challenge, and his enormous ego could not allow it to stand. He would not be doubted, not by a tiny talking cat, no matter how charming. Difficult, the ogre scoffed, a deep rumble shaking the floor. Impossible, you say? Foolish cat, there is nothing beyond my power. Watch closely, and you shall see that transforming into the smallest of creatures is no more a challenge than becoming the largest. The ogre squared his shoulders, a glint of arrogant defiance in his eyes, ready to prove the full extent of his magical might. Puss, his heart thumping with a mixture of daring and calculated risk, watched intently, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on his whiskers. The trap was set. The ogre, in his monumental pride, was about to walk right into it, unaware that his greatest display of power would be his very last. The ogre, his colossal form, still radiating an aura of immense power and unchallenged authority, bristled at Puss's subtle challenge. His vanity, a weakness Puss had so shrewdly identified, was now fully engaged. To be doubted, even by a tiny talking cat, was an affront he could not tolerate. His small, glinting eyes narrowed further, and a low growl rumbled deep within his chest. A sound that ordinarily would have sent tremors of fear through any living creature. But Puss stood firm, his own gaze unwavering, waiting patiently for the ogre to take the bait. The air in the grand dining hall crackled, with a silent tension poised on the edge of a magical eruption. Doubt me, do you, little cat? The ogre boomed, his voice a mocking roar that echoed through the cavernous space. You think it a greater feat to shrink than to expand? Very well, witness the true mastery of ogre magic. You shall see that I am capable of anything. And with those words, the ogre threw back his head and let out another earth-shattering roar. A blinding flash of emerald light erupted from his massive form, momentarily engulfing the entire hall. The very stone walls seemed to vibrate, and the scent of ozone filled the air. Puss, ever vigilant, braced himself, his pupils dilating to mere slits in the sudden, intense light. When the light faded as quickly as it had appeared, the gargantuan ogre was gone. Where he had stood moments before, only an empty space remained. Puss scanned the floor, his ears swiveling, his whiskers twitching with predatory focus. And then he saw it, a tiny brown mouse, no larger than his own paw, scuttling nervously across the polished stone floor, its whiskers twitching frantically, its small, beady eyes darting around in confusion. It was the ogre, in his smallest, most vulnerable form, completely unaware of the deadly trap into which his pride had led him. Puss wasted not a single breath. There was no hesitation, no moment of doubt. His emerald eyes, usually full of clever mischief, now hardened with a cold, primal instinct. This was the culmination of his most daring plan, the critical juncture upon which his master's entire future hinged. With a lightning-fast, silent spring, Puss launched himself from his position. He landed squarely on the terrified mouse, his powerful paws pinning it to the ground. There was a tiny squeak, a desperate, futile struggle, and then, with a swift, decisive crunch, Puss devoured the transformed ogre whole. The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the soft click of Puss's tongue as he licked his whiskers, a faint glint of satisfaction in his eyes. The tyrannical ogre, master of vast lands and fearsome magic, had been utterly vanquished, consumed by a creature he had once dismissed as a mere pet. The castle, once vibrant with the ogre's booming laughter and the bustle of his goblin servants, now settled into an eerie hush. The handful of goblin scullions and wary trolls who served the ogre, having heard the initial roars and then the sudden silence, peered cautiously into the dining hall. Their eyes widened with terror, and then a flicker of bewildered relief as they saw Puss, calmly preening, the enormous ogre conspicuously absent. They understood, with a primitive, instinctual certainty, what had just occurred. A new master was in charge, and he was far more dangerous than his size suggested. Puss, sensing their fear and their burgeoning understanding, turned his attention to them. His voice, usually so charming and persuasive, now took on an intimidating edge, a low, authoritative purr that promised both swift justice and potential reward. "Hear me, all of you," he commanded, his words resonating through the silent hall. "Your former master is no more. From this moment forward, this magnificent castle, and indeed all the lands you surveyed for him, belong to my master, the Marquis of Carriage. The king himself, accompanied by the princess, is on his way here, and they expect to be welcomed by the Marquis and his loyal household. When they arrive, you will tell them, without hesitation, that this is the castle of the Marquis of Carriage. You will greet him as your lord and master. Obey me, and you shall find yourselves in the service of a generous and benevolent lord. Disobey, and you shall face a fate far worse than the ogre ever inflicted." The goblins and trolls, their faces a mixture of fear and dawning hope, stammered their agreement, bowing low to the formidable cat. They had known only tyranny and fear, and while Puss was certainly intimidating, there was a calculated intelligence in his eyes that suggested a more ordered, perhaps even fairer, rule. They quickly scurried to attend to Puss's immediate commands, which mainly consisted of ensuring the castle was in perfect, pristine order for the arrival of royalty. Puss himself did a swift survey, tidying away the last remnants of the ogre's crude feasting, and ensuring every tapestry was straight, every floor gleaming. He positioned himself strategically near the entrance, awaiting the culmination of his masterpiece. It wasn't long before the familiar sound of carriage wheels and horses' hooves grew louder, echoing across the castle's vast drawbridge. The king's magnificent coach, now carrying not only the beaming king and the enchanted princess, but also the bewildered Mark, rolled grandly into the outer courtyard. The sheer scale and beauty of the castle, with its soaring turrets, its immaculate gardens, and its impressive stone facade, caused the king to gasp aloud. "My dear Marquis," the king exclaimed, his voice filled with overwhelming delight, his eyes wide with wonder. He turned to Mark, his face glowing with fatherly approval. "What an absolutely magnificent dwelling! Truly, this is beyond anything I could have imagined. And it is all yours. Oh, my dear boy, what an extraordinary estate you possess. You truly are a lord among men." The king was utterly captivated, his senses overwhelmed by the splendor, his mind already convinced by Puss's earlier machinations and the peasants' testimonies. Mark, stepping out of the carriage, felt a wave of dizzying disbelief wash over him. His eyes, accustomed to the humble confines of the mill, struggled to take in the sheer opulence surrounding him. This was not merely a house. It was a fortress of luxury, a testament to unimaginable wealth. He felt a profound sense of awe, tinged with a delicious terror at the audacity of the deception. He looked around, seeing the meticulously kept gardens, the imposing entrance, and the small, deferential figures of the castle servants, all bowing low to him, the supposed Marquis of Carabas. He searched for Puss and saw him, a tiny, self-satisfied figure standing proudly at the foot of the grand entrance, a triumphant gleam in his emerald eyes. A silent communication passed between master and cat, a nod of approval from Puss, a look of stunned gratitude from Mark. The princess, too, was utterly enchanted, her beautiful eyes reflecting the sparkling grandeur of the castle, widened with genuine admiration. She had often dreamed of living in a magnificent castle, but this surpassed even her most vivid fantasies. She gazed at Mark, her heart fluttering with a mixture of wonder and affection. To be wed to a man who possessed such vast lands, such a charming demeanor, and now such a breathtaking home, seemed like a gift from the heavens themselves. She could not imagine a more perfect match. The king, unable to contain his enthusiasm, grasped Mark by the shoulders, his voice practically booming with joy. "My dear Marquis," he declared, "I have seen enough. Your generosity, your wealth, your noble spirit, everything about you confirms my deepest hopes for my daughter's happiness. There is no need for further delay. I wish for you to marry my daughter, the princess, as soon as arrangements can be made. Will you accept my blessing and her hand?" Mark, still somewhat dazed by the whirlwind of events, could barely believe his ears. The princess, the most beautiful woman he had ever seen, was looking at him with such warmth and affection. The king, once a distant figure of authority, was now offering him everything. Overwhelmed, yet utterly overjoyed, Mark could only stammer, "Your Majesty, I would be honored beyond words. It would be the greatest joy of my life." He cast a quick, grateful glance towards the small, booted figure of Puss, who watched the scene unfold with an air of complete contentment. Puss in Boots, having successfully orchestrated the downfall of the ogre and presented his master with a magnificent castle, silently savored his triumph. His work, though perhaps not fully concluded, had reached its glorious peak. The miller's son, once destined for poverty, was now hailed as a marquis, betrothed to a princess and master of an extraordinary estate. All achieved through a sack, a pair of boots, and the unparalleled cunning of one very special cat. The future, for Mark and for Puss, looked brighter than any sunrise. The words of the king, booming with genuine joy and unexpected generosity, still echoed in Mark's ears, mingling with the last, faint squeak of the unfortunate ogre from Puss's recent triumph. To be offered the hand of the most beautiful princess in the land, within the walls of a castle that now, impossibly, belonged to him, was a dream beyond any fantasy the young miller's son could ever have conceived. His heart swelled with a potent mix of disbelief, overwhelming happiness, and a profound, silent gratitude for the clever, boot-wearing cat who had orchestrated it all. He looked at the princess, whose eyes met his with a tenderness that banished any lingering doubt about the sincerity of her affection, and a wave of pure, unadulterated bliss washed over him. "Your Majesty," Mark managed to stammer, his voice thick with emotion. I accept with all my heart to marry your daughter, the princess, would be the greatest honor and joy of my life." He bowed deeply, his new royal attire rustling softly, and then turned to the princess, taking her offered hand. Her touch was soft, warm, and utterly captivating. A gentle blush rose to her cheeks as their eyes met, confirming the silent, blossoming love that had taken root during their carriage ride. The king, delighted by their obvious affection, let out a hearty laugh, clapping Mark on the shoulder with such force that it nearly knocked the new Marquis off his feet. "Excellent, simply excellent," the king exclaimed, his face alight with satisfaction. "This is indeed a most fortunate day, a grand union between the princess and the noble Marquis of Carriage, master of such magnificent lands and this truly splendid castle. Let the preparations begin at once. There is no time to waste. A wedding of this magnitude demands swift and joyous execution." And so, the grand castle of the former ogre, now firmly under the benevolent, if initially bewildered, dominion of the Marquis of Carriage, sprang to life with a flurry of activity. The goblin and troll servants, who had previously lived in fear, now bustled about with a newfound eagerness, eager to please their new, far less terrifying master. Under Puss's meticulous, if sometimes demanding supervision, the castle was transformed further, scrubbed clean of any lingering ogre-esque grimness, adorned with fresh flowers, and prepared for the impending royal celebration. Tapestries were aired, floors polished to a mirror sheen, and the vast kitchens, once used for the ogre's crude feasts, now hummed with the preparation of truly exquisite banquets. The news of the impending royal wedding spread like wildfire throughout the kingdom, carried on the wings of excited gossips and official proclamations. Everyone spoke of the charming, handsome Marquis of Carriage, whose sudden appearance and immense wealth had captured the heart of the beautiful princess. No one, of course, had any idea of his true origins, nor of the extraordinary cunning of his feline companion. The mystery surrounding his rise only added to his allure, painting him as a man of great destiny and perhaps a touch of romantic enigma. Mark, surprisingly, settled into his new role with remarkable grace. Stripped of his humble miller's clothes and consistently encouraged by Puss, he began to carry himself with the quiet confidence of a man truly born to nobility. He listened intently to the king's advice, learned the intricacies of courtly etiquette, and most importantly, continued to charm the princess with his genuine kindness and thoughtful nature. The love between them deepened with each passing day, a bond forged not just on Puss's clever deceptions, but on a true affection that transcended titles and fabricated wealth. He discovered within himself a natural wisdom and compassion that shone through, making him a truly beloved figure, admired by the court and adored by his future queen. Finally, the day of the wedding arrived, a day of unparalleled splendor and joyous celebration. The sun shone down from a cloudless sky, bathing the castle in a golden light. Guests from across the kingdom, nobles and commoners alike, flocked to witness the union. The castle courtyards were festooned with banners and garlands, and the air vibrated with the sound of music, laughter, and the joyful pealing of church bells. The princess, radiant in a gown of shimmering white silk adorned with pearls, walked down the aisle of the castle's magnificent chapel, her heart beating with happiness. Mark, standing tall and handsome in a suit of regal velvet, awaited her at the altar his eyes filled with adoration. The king, shedding a tear of paternal joy, gave his daughter away, knowing she was marrying a man who, despite his sudden appearance, possessed a good heart and a true spirit. Puss in Boots, ever the discreet orchestrator, sat proudly at Mark's feet, his tiny boots gleaming, his intelligent eyes surveying the scene with an air of profound satisfaction. He had done it. He had taken a pauper and made him a prince. The wedding ceremony was a beautiful affair, filled with solemn vows and heartfelt blessings. When the Marquis of Carriage and the princess were finally pronounced husband and wife, a great cheer erupted, echoing through the chapel and out into the bustling courtyards. The celebrations that followed were legendary, lasting for days. There were feasts of unimaginable richness, banquets piled high with delicacies, music that filled the nights with joyous melodies, and dances that continued until dawn. Mark, now truly a prince by marriage, danced with his beloved princess, their faces alight with pure happiness, their future stretching before them, boundless and bright. And what of Puss in Boots? He, of course, was honored above all other cats in the kingdom. He no longer needed to hunt for rabbits or fish, though he often did, simply for sport and the pleasure of the chase. He lived a life of pampered luxury, always by his master's side, admired and respected by all. He maintained a certain air of dignified authority, often serving as a trusted advisor to the new prince and princess, his clever insights proving invaluable in matters of court and kingdom. He continued to wear his fine boots, which were regularly polished to a brilliant shine, a constant reminder of his remarkable achievements. He was a constant companion, a loyal friend, and the undeniable architect of Mark's incredible fortune. The Marquis of Carriage and his princess lived a long and incredibly happy life together. Mark proved to be a wise and benevolent ruler, governing his vast domains with fairness and compassion. The peasants, who had once lived in fear of the ogre, now prospered under his just rule, their fields yielding bountiful harvests, their lives marked by peace and contentment. The love between Mark and the princess deepened with each passing year, and their kingdom flourished under their combined reign. And so, my dear listener, we come to the end of our tale. The miller's son, once despairing, found his greatest fortune in the most unexpected of places, a clever, boot-wearing cat. It is a story of wit, of courage, and of the incredible power of believing in the extraordinary. As the night slowly settles in, and everything becomes calm and quiet, the echoes of the story softly fade away, leaving you with the gentle warmth of a happy ending. The clever Puss in Boots, the humble miller's son, turned noble Marquis, and his radiant princess, now nestled comfortably in the pages of your imagination. Let the images of grand castles, sparkling feasts, and the quiet purr of a very special cat drift through your mind like soft clouds across the moon. Feel the lingering sense of contentment, knowing that even the smallest beginnings can lead to the grandest destinies, and that sometimes the most remarkable helpers come in the most unexpected forms. Allow the gentle magic of this tale to lull you, wrapping you in a comforting embrace. As the last whispers of the story melt into the peaceful silence of the night, know that you are safe, you are warm, and you are cherished. Let your breathing deepen, your body relax, and your mind drift gently into slumber. The world outside is still, and you are perfectly at peace. Close your eyes now, my dear friend. Let the quiet magic carry you away to dreams filled with wonder and sweet serenity.